Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, Anthony Power and I have a stacked agenda. We've got big news and monthly production results from some of your top miners that we cover on the channel, including CleanSpark, IREN, and of course Bitfarms. Now there's been a lot of activity, a lot of discussion on Twitter and the X community over the weekend, so we want to get into that as well. We're now only a few weeks out from halving. It's happening this month, you guys, so a ton to go through in today's video. But before we do, please take a second, hit the like button. It's 100% free to do. Anthony loves it. It's a big help to me and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. Just hit 43,000 subscribers, so thank you to each and every one of you for your continued support. And finally, leave a comment in the section below. Let us know if you're holding any of the companies we discuss in today's video, your thoughts and outlook heading into halving and for the remainder of 2024. Now with that being said, let's get into today's update. Okay guys, so that's right, it's Monday morning and the week is kicking off in a big fashion here. We've got production numbers out for some of the top miners. We've got news that happened over the weekend. Really a strong start to the week here, not to mention halving is happening this month, Anthony. It's April 1st, it's a 4-year cycle and we finally made it to the month. Plus, we've got a number of other things we wanted to update in this video. So welcome back, Anthony, and hope you had a good Easter.
Yeah, I had a great Easter. Thanks for asking. Cheers.
Excellent. Well, let's get right into it. So we wanted to follow up on a story that we initially covered on Friday. So first things first, Anthony, I wanted to make a correction. CleanSpark ATM, we put out a story on Friday, obviously following this news, and ATM announced after hours, heading into a long weekend after some insider selling. Now, we looked into the press release, obviously, in more detail. You were able to comb through that. We were also able to confirm with Matt Schultz himself that this was a fresh new $800 million ATM offering. So we had initially said it was a 500 plus 300 or a $300 million upsize. We wanted to first and foremost correct that. It's an 800 million ATM. But we wanted to more so discuss how that's impacting the CleanSpark shares today. Obviously, a lot of discussion over the long weekend about CleanSpark, where this money was going to be used. And then they came out Monday morning here with a very strong production report. I think 806 Bitcoin, setting a record for the company and announcing that they've now fully financed, I think, 160,000 of the newest generation machines, Anthony. So I know I data dumped a lot there. What are your thoughts on all of that?
So yeah, we got the amount wrong on Friday, and I think, to be honest with you, I think a lot of people got it wrong on Friday. I was on a Spaces meeting, well over 1,000 people on Thursday night when that announcement came out, and many of the people on that Spaces meeting were indicating it was an increase of 300,000. And if you look at the actual document itself, it did talk about amendment. It talked about 5th of January. So there was some on the first page of the document. There appeared to lack the clarification that you'd normally expect. And yes, if you read through the document, I found the paragraph, a number of pages from the first page, indicating how many shares they had outstanding at the moment and how many shares they plan to have outstanding at the end of the ATM. And if you took that number, which was about 34 million shares, multiplied it by the share price at the date that the announcement was released, which was $23, you got to 800. So that type of communication could have probably been a little bit better, a little bit easier for shareholders and for retail investors to look at that. The issue still resides with the fact that the announcement came out a day after an announcement that 3 of the senior officers of the company were selling shares. Now, again, over the weekend, people have managed to go back through all the relevant documents, and there were the relevant documents in place. So back in December, I think about the 21st of December, the CEO and the chairman both submitted their 10b5-1s. Which is basically putting an advance note in that they're going to sell shares over a period. And for Matthew, it was 1.286 million shares between a period of 27th of March and October 11th, 2024. So over a period of about 6 months of this year. if the share price reached a certain threshold, and the share price reached a certain threshold on the 27th of March, and the shares were sold on that very first day of that period. And the same happened with the CEO's shares. So Zach had a similar amount of 1.4 million shares to be sold during a period of March the 21st in this instance to November 11th. And on March the 21st, a significant amount of shares were sold by him. And also the chief finance officer, he also had, an amount of shares. Now, if you look at the amount of shares those three sold over the period of a month before that ATM, it was something like about 35 million in total. So you're going to sell shares. The ATM came out on the 28th and the share price dropped, and the share price today has further dropped because that announcement came out after the market closed on the day before Good Friday, and the markets were closed on Good Friday. So the communication of that, and whether they were automated sales or whether they were sales that have to be approved and agreed to go forward that day, I don't know the answer to that one. But to have those sales and then the following day an ATM, which tells you that the company's going to dilute the company shares by about 19%, means that the share price effectively going to drop, because when you're issuing more shares in a company, your valuation doesn't go up overnight. The valuation has to incorporate those extra diluted shares. So if you've got a company that's worth $100 with 100 shares, and you dilute it by 20%, it doesn't mean that the value of the company goes up to $120. It stays at $100, but now you've got 120 shares for that $100 valuation. So the shares are worth less than $1. And in this instance, the CleanSpark share price has dropped. Now, I don't have an issue with the ATM one iota. They've utilised that ATM very successfully over the last 18 months, very vigorously. They've done exactly what they said they would do. They've grown from 2 exahash to 16 to now nearly 17 exahash, with plans to get to 32 by the end of the year. And the 800 million, once we find what it's going to be used for, we'll probably get them to have the infrastructure and machines to get to 32 exahash by the end of the year. So I haven't got an issue with that there. All I have an issue with is the fact that those sales went through the day before the ATM was announced. And that to me is a challenge. And yes, in December those documents were put in place to do that, but I don't know what happens on March the 27th. Is it an automated thing? Could it have been March the 29th? Could it have been April the 1st? Any period between March the 27th and October 11th in the case of Matthew was the date that agreed. So just to clarify, I think we've clarified today exactly what's occurred now. People can make their own decision. I still believe CleanSpark, will have a great year and get to their, hopefully get to their target. They've set an ambitious target to grow to 32, and they're not the only miners to set an ambitious target. So we'll be looking, very closely at all these targets to see how the miners are doing as we go through the year and analysing that. But it looks like they're going to get their 20 exahash by the middle of the year. So that's the first target to achieve. And then they've got to add another 12 exahash in the last 6 months of the year. And that 800 million could be used to buy infrastructure, because you've already articulated that they've now utilised their option to buy a further 160,000 mining machines. So that gets them to where they need to. 160,000 S21s will get them now, and they're fully funded. So they need infrastructure for that, and maybe the 800 million is to be used for that. It would have been probably a good idea to at least give some clarity what the 800 million was for, maybe as a part of an update, just to say this is what we plan to use the money, and we'll be using the ATM over this period. So again, it's just sort of like the communications that could have been a little better and put people's mind at rest. But bear in mind, we said on Friday this company was valued at 600 million back in October. And today it's valued at over 4 billion, or it was valued at over 4 billion before today's drop. But I'm assuming it's still over 4 billion at the moment. So it's a significant rise, and it'll continue to do that if it meets these targets.
Yeah, great analysis there, Anthony. And I'm thinking back on Thursday, I think CleanSpark was down around 8%. And right before we started filming this, I think they were down another 11. So pretty much near that 20% you're talking about in terms of dilution. They came off a big month. I think they were in excess of 800 Bitcoin mined in the month of March. So they're definitely able to deploy that capital efficiently. They've been very good stewards of capital, but I do agree with you, Anthony. The delivery, the rollout, probably not the best communication plan with that one. However, it seems to be in the past now. That's the nice thing about releasing news prior to a holiday is it's soon consumed by the news cycle and old news. And it appears that may be the case here. So the next news that we want to cover in that news cycle just came out from IREN. So this is one a lot of people on social media are very excited about. Anthony, I know you're passionate about IREN. You've been following them for quite some time. Now, they come all the way from Australia. They definitely have a pronounced HODL strategy. We've talked to Daniel Roberts about that HODL or lack thereof strategy for quite some time. What do you make of their big announcement today, Anthony? Really confirming what a lot of people have wanted from IREN, not to mention now issuing quarterly statements, which is something you've been mentioning since I've met you.
Yeah, I mean, you're quite right. An Australian company, they don't have to follow the rules that the US companies have to by quarterly filings, and they've used 6 monthly filings for the majority of their time on the Nasdaq, which has been the last 2.5 years. They did actually give a quarterly update with their last 6 monthly update just to highlight the last quarter. So you've got to feel that they might be going that direction. But today's announcement was really effectively ticking everyone's box that was waiting for this information to come out. So, a lot of people were waiting to hear, would they have sufficient funding to get to 20 exahash? We knew that they'd already purchased 11 exahash and that they had an option for 9. And on the option for 9 exahash, they'd already made a 10% deposit. So without losing a deposit, you think that they were going to make good. Well, today they've announced that they are fully funded to get to 20 exahash. We know that they've got the facility already, so they don't have to worry about infrastructure. It's just a case now of building out the infrastructure at Childress. And we've seen that site develop since it was first purchased. They've now got 60 megawatts actually working at the site. They've got another 40 megawatts that are close to being completed. And then in the second half of the year, they'll then complete the rest of the facilities there to get that 20 exahash number. They did bring out an operational update today for the company. That'll come out in a few days' time. But they let the market know that they've already achieved 8 exahash. So they achieved 7 exahash in the previous month there, that target there. They've achieved 8 exahash as of today, and they're online to achieve 10 exahash by the middle of the year. So that 8 exahash at the moment, if you compare that with likes of CleanSpark, effectively half the size of the company. And if you look at the market capitalization today, you've got IREN, who are at the moment about 900 million, and you've got CleanSpark at just shy of 3.8 billion, and effectively we double the hash rate. So there's an indicator there. They both mine Bitcoin at about 60% margin from their last quarterly, so the energy cost for each of these companies is very close. But just as an indication, you've got a company there with half the hash rate, and we haven't even talked about the high performance computing, that the amount of revenues that deliver on that. I'll come to that in a second. But you've got a company there just in terms of self-mining hash rate, about half the hash rate for about 25% of the value. So maybe there is some more room to maneuver here with IREN to increase that market capitalization once the market starts to realize how some of these have been valued, some of these miners are valued, because you do have a sort of like a split at the top. You do have the likes of Hive Digital, Riot Platforms, and CleanSpark, who are significantly valued more than the rest of the mining companies. They're clearly, from a valuation perspective, head and shoulders. And then you have people sort of scratching their heads and looking at some of the other miners in that sort of mid-tier bracket who are sort of creeping up now to get to these targets. So the likes of TeraWulf, the likes of Bitfarms, the likes of Cypher, the likes of IREN. even add Hut 8 Corp to that bracket as well, with the amount of hash rate and the amount of hosted hash rate. And we had Ash on the podcast the other day. So, we've got a better understanding of their organization. So they've got a significant amount of assets under their management, and they're, significantly lower than $1 billion. And also you've got Core Scientific as well, who effectively at the moment seems to be, certainly the last 3 months, have mined the most Bitcoin. They were going to achieve the most Bitcoin in March, 100%, because we've already seen what CleanSpark have produced. And we're already seeing what Marathon Digital have produced because people look at the wallets. So it looks like CleanSpark might have pipped Marathon this month, if some of these people who check the wallets are proved to be accurate in their findings. But Core Scientific will be certainly closer to 900 this month rather than 800. But to go back to IREN, achieving that expansion to 20 by the end of the year, and by 10 of the year, looks like it's well on track with all the funding in place. They've also got their data centers ready to take on the high performance computing services that they're providing, and that's only growing as well. So you're looking at a total of 816 NVIDIA 100 GPUs, and those machines will generate about 14 to 17 million of annualized hardware profit. So you're looking at a 24-month payback on the cost of those machines, and therefore after that then it's pure profit after that. But significant revenue streams coming in for IREN, and we've already articulated the HPC revenues that the likes of Bit Digital are bringing in, and I'm sure we'll see some of the other mining companies come in with once they've got their customers in place, and their significant amounts of revenues come from their services. But this is a great add-on to the self mining. This is going to be carried out at their Prince George data center, which is it's capable of operating 30,000 NVIDIA 100 GPUs. And so, they've got 816 ongoing. So, you could effectively see that that only represents probably 2.5% of the total that they can actually operate there. So these types of services are customer led. And as we've seen with Bit Digital, their initial contract was 35 million. It's now increasing to 100 million in the last 3 months. And you could well see, if this works out well for IREN, this could also see their services in this particular business increase significantly as we go forward.
Yeah, very exciting on a lot of fronts for IREN there. I'm going to say, Anthony, I really did like how they broke out for each kind of business unit or type of chip, the annualized revenue expectation there. I thought that was great. The quarterly reporting I thought was phenomenal. And when you talk about valuations of IREN compared to some of the other miners, it definitely is something to look at. You guys take note of this miner. They've got a lot of things on the agenda in 2024. Now, we've talked about on the program having a plan and executing on that plan are two different things, but so far they've definitely lived up to expectations. Now, I wanted to get into Bitfarms production as well, Anthony, but one thing you mentioned as you were talking through IREN there that I thought was really interesting about valuation. It's very difficult to get a unanimous decision in this sector about what these companies are worth at our level, at the retail level, or even at the investment bank level or Wall Street kind of big money level. And I think that's really where the opportunity in Bitcoin mining lies, Anthony. So I wanted to bring that up because realistically, people who are watching this program, the interviews, the CEOs, following some of the other channels in this space, you've got just as much information as a lot of the investment firms that are looking to take exposure towards Bitcoin. So in a lot of industries, because they've been around a long time, they're a lot more, consolidated or standardized. There's easier metrics towards valuation, but in this one, Anthony, because it's so new, a lot of these companies, this is their first cycle, their first halving, really a lot of opportunity in terms of valuation, and I thought that was a cool point that you brought up there. So let's get into Bitfarms. As always, they're out with production numbers on the first of the month. I think in terms of consistency, Anthony, they do get top marks. They came in just right around 300 Bitcoin for the month. Now, the tail of the tape with this one, we had Ben on last month. A very strong interview, a lot of positive feedback. And right after that, they announced what a lot of people think is kind of an obscure time to swap CEOs. So they are looking for a new leader at this company. The question in my mind when I heard that is what kind of ripple effect will that have, and how big of impact will that have on the actual execution plans that Ben laid out in that interview? So Anthony, two-pronged question here for you. Can you give us an update on production, and can you let us know what you're thinking in terms of Bitfarms and their execution plan for 2024?
Yeah, I mean, they mined 286 Bitcoin during the month of March, so that's about 5% lower than the previous month, even though there's 2 extra days of mining. And again, it's down to the difficulty, and also for Bitfarms especially, it was down to curtailment in not just one area, in a number of areas, and so they were only able to achieve an average operational hash rate of 5.7. So their month-end hash rate was 6.5. So they were not operating anywhere near 100% utilization. They expect to grow to 7 exahash in the first or second week of April. So that will be a positive move there. So they've announced in March that they've the purchase option for 28,000 T21 miners and an additional 19,280 T21 miners, along with 3,888 S21 miners and 740 Bitmain 21 hydro miners. So that gets them there to the 21 exahash. And we heard Ben talk on the podcast about the T21s and how they've been testing those machines in the environment, and they were getting sort of 25 to 30% more productivity out of those machines than they're actually on the box. So they were doing amazing things, and so you can see these big orders for T21s coming through there. They've tested them, they know they're doing well, and they're putting them into their facilities. 21 exahash is going to be quite a challenge. I mean, if you think about now, given the benefit of the doubt, there'll be 7 in exahash in the next few weeks. That means they've got to literally grow by 200% in 9 months. Now, I sat with Bitfarms in a conference 2 years ago, and their target to get to the end of 2022 was about 8 exahash. And at the end of the conference, actually, a news update came out from the company saying they had to revise it to 7 because of market conditions. And so, that target of 7 was a target that, should have been achieved at the end of 2022. And we're in 2024 now, so they're about to achieve it now. There's going to have to be some real movement to get to that 21 exahash. Can they do it? Time will tell. I mean, you look at some of the miners who've got all the infrastructure in place, and the ability to grow hash rate quickly. I mean, we saw CleanSpark grow from 10 exahash to 16 exahash in sort of like the first 6 weeks of 2024. So we can see these big numbers occur, and we'll see. But Bitfarms aren't the only ones in this bracket. We just articulated IREN are also looking to get to 20, which means they've got to literally grow 150% from where they are today in the last 9 months. And Riot Platforms, another miner who articulated they'll get to 31.5 exahash. That's the sort of same distance that Bitfarms have got to go here. Now, in fairness to Riot, they've got an enormous facility at Corsicana, which they're quickly building up there, and that should be energized in the next few weeks to start increasing hash rate. So we'll get a feel for that company as well. But 21's, it's an ambitious target, and you set yourself an ambitious target, you'll be marked on whether you achieve it or not. The market will probably build some of these forward growth strategies into the pricing. So but Bitfarms at the moment, it's close to 7 exahash. We talked about the valuation for IREN. We talked about the valuation for CleanSpark. They're currently valued around about 700 million, between 700 and 800 million. So again, if you look at that comparison to say 2 or 3 of the big miners, it appears that this tier 2 miner again is looking undervalued, or whether we've got it wrong and some of the other miners are significantly overvalued. So there's an argument for that as well. So, but in terms of positives for the monthly update. They achieved with what they had, with the curtailment they had in Canada, in Paraguay, and Argentina, because of a number of issues they had there with regards to power. They still able to achieve 5.7 online. That equaled, a higher amount per exahash than the previous month. It was up 2%. They added 2 Bitcoin to their hodl, so their hodl now sits at 806 Bitcoin. They sold the remaining hodl, remaining production during the month to cover their operational and capital expenditure. They have about 66 million in cash available and 57 million in Bitcoin, with the price as at the end of March. So 123 million available treasury funds to use as and when required. So, again, we've talked about, miners having some cash runway going through this next few weeks into the halving. It's really important. And, Bitfarms, and I didn't mention it with the IREN update, but IREN have got 300 million in cash available. So they might not have any Bitcoin on the balance sheet at the moment because they sell on a daily basis, but they have a significant cash war chest again, to cover what they need to do between now and the end of the year, and potentially maybe any opportunities that arise between now and then as well.
For sure. And the more people we talk to in this space, Anthony, it's quite widely expected we're going to see a lot of M&A activity around the halving happening this month. So we expect a lot of these companies are cashing up for potential opportunities that may arise. The other thing that I thought of as you're talking about this, in 2023, we really heard a lot of companies come out with huge purchase orders, option purchase orders and facility updates, exahash targets. Now 2024 really feels like a prove it year to me, Anthony. These companies have set these ambitious targets. This year is really going to be around who can achieve those, and I think that's where the market is going to reward in terms of share price and growth for these companies. So a lot of updates to kick off the week. It's not even halfway through Monday, and we've already had what seems like a full week worth of action here, Anthony. I appreciate your insight as always. We'll kick it back to you for any closing thoughts. But you guys, if you're watching at this point, hit the like button. Anthony loves it. It's a huge help to myself. It's free to do. And hit the subscribe button. We just crossed that 43,000 subscriber milestone. So Anthony, take us home here. Anything we forgot?
The only thing I'd like to say is I get a lot of messages asking me about mining companies buying other mining companies. And I'm going to say now, don't think there's going to be any sort of the likes of a Marathon or a Riot or a CleanSpark buying up a company like Bitfarms or an IREN or anything like that. What these companies will be looking for, they'll be looking for assets for mining companies that are unable to carry on operating. So the majority, if not all the mining companies that are included in my analysis, fully expect them to carry on in their own right, going through the halving. They're all preparing really well for that, and we'll cover that halving and some of the things miners are doing to get ready for that halving in a future podcast. But I can't see CleanSpark buying the likes of Bitfarms, although it seems feasible to do if you think about the amount of ATM they've got in place now, 800 million, and I've just articulated the valuation of Bitfarms is under 800 million, so it just seems a natural thing to do. Well, it won't happen in reality. I mean, if the likes of a company came after Bitfarms or any of those miners that we've already articulated to, companies would have to pay a serious premium to buy those companies, and that could be 30 or 40%. So you wouldn't be getting the company at 700. You might have to pay well over $1 billion for that company. And if you think about how much hash rate and infrastructure that the likes of CleanSpark are going to utilize, so if you take the 500 million that they've used, so that ATM of 500 million that they announced on the 5th of January, in the next 87 days, they utilized 487 million of that. So they basically diluted shares to the value of 487 million. And if you add that to the 800 million ATM now, and you believe that that's going to get them to 32 exahash in terms of machines and in terms of infrastructure, that means they've effectively paid 1.3 billion to grow 16 exahash. So why would they be looking to pay, a similar amount for the likes of a Bitfarms with 7 exahash at the moment? So it's just not practical. It really will be distressed assets that some of these companies will be looking for, or infrastructure whereby the current company can't maintain its level of Bitcoin mining. It might be going under. Think about what happened to Argo Blockchain at the end of 2022, when it was literally, they were about to go into Chapter 11. In fact, they even notified by mistake a draft letter to say they were going into Chapter 11, and they were saved at the 11th hour by Galaxy, who basically paid for the site and gave them some cash runway to get through those next few months. And they're still with us now. So that was like 15 months ago. And Argo is still operating, but they're mostly operating now as effectively like as a hosted miner. So they've still got 2.7 exahash, but they've got literally, I think, just one facility left now. And Galaxy own the other 2 facilities. So I don't see that type of merger and acquisition. We had Asher on the other day about USBTC, which were a private company merging with Hute, and that made sense for both companies. You had one company with a really strong balance sheet in terms of Bitcoin, and you had another company with a really strong portfolio in terms of infrastructure and assets under management, but didn't have a significant cash flow on their accounts. So it was from a merging point of view, it was an opportunity for both companies to grow and utilize each other effectively. So that made sense, but I can't see the likes of anyone going in there and buying an IREN or a Bitfarms or a Wolf. Could you imagine Paul Prager getting a phone call and saying, "We're coming to buy Wolf"? I mean, he was quite passionate when we mentioned about having a Bitcoin hodl. Just think what someone would be like if they rang up and said, "We're coming to buy your company."
Yeah, I would think you're on the right track here, Anthony. And I would imagine this is going to be project level distressed assets in the private sector, maybe where these companies don't have access to the public markets. They haven't been able to raise money. Therefore, they don't have money to upgrade their fleets, and maybe they're not going to be as efficient as needed. The other thing we got to talk about having in one interview or one video this week, Anthony, and then we'll also have to talk about some of the new miners coming out, because I know a lot of these purchase orders are surrounding S21, T21, but we're starting to see miners now, some of them as efficient as 15 joules per terahash. So a lot on the horizon in terms of hardware and ever-changing dynamics there as well. But we'll save those for another discussion. You guys, thanks so much for watching today. Leave a comment in the section below. Let us know your thoughts. We'll see you tomorrow.